So yeah, I think Indian men are attractive. I go to school with some. I have friends and colleagues, so I definitely find them attractive, like American men, for sure. Yeah. I do find to seem that Indian men are more family oriented than the actual American. The Americans are more like party life and settling down a little later in their mid 30s. And I definitely see American and Indian men for like family men, more for Indians. I see them more with family. Indian men are more family oriented.
Well, it is possible that some may agree with her viewpoint, but as far as I'm concerned, when I decided to marry an Indian man myself, the reaction from some people in my country was not very positive, even though my family members were always supportive of my decision. Sometimes due to limited understanding, and sometimes because of negative media stereotyping, many in Europe and America do not appear to have a very accurate perception of Indian men. In the age of social media, prejudices and preconceived notions are usually fueled by popular influencers. In India's case, unfortunately, it was a famous Swedish Youtuber who almost single-handedly stereotyped Indian men negatively, at least in the world of YouTube. The Swedish Youtuber shouldn't be taken lightly because he alone generates more views than many well-established news outlets and is therefore capable of influencing the perceptions of millions of people overnight. He picked a few random cases in which some Indian men had sent indecent online messages to Western women, but in the absence of proper statistics and without presenting a broader global perspective, he ended up stereotyping millions of Indian men who themselves are against any kind of online sexual harassment. Creating negative stereotypes to vilify an entire group or community without any serious attempt to closely examine human behavior across the world is likely to do more harm than good. In the globalized world that we live in, only when we truly understand current human behavior across the globe, we will be in a far better position to help the victims by finding effective solutions to combat such problems. For example, in Europe, 11% of women have experienced inappropriate advances on social websites or have been subjected to sexually explicit emails or text messages. 20% of young women have been victims of such cyber harassment. Even more disturbing is the fact that 16% of Europeans think that sending unwanted sexually explicit emails or messages should not be against the law. The inappropriate behavior is not just limited to smartphones. For instance, in Sweden, 4.1% of men have revealed their private parts to a stranger at least once in their lives, and quite disturbingly, the act made them sexually aroused. Women in America face a lot of sexual harassment on public transportation every day. More than 1 in 4 women in Washington, D.C., United States, have experienced some form of sexual harassment on public transportation. Quite disturbingly, 77% of victims never reported the incident, and even more disturbingly, 53% of bystanders never reported the behavior or incident. Quite worryingly, 41% of Europeans think that making sexually suggestive comments or jokes to a woman in the street should not be against the law, and 18% say touching a colleague in an unwanted or inappropriate way should not be illegal. These problems are not unique to Europe or America. Women face similar problems in India, Africa, and other parts of the world too. Also, it doesn't mean that men are not victims, but in most cases, it is women who are at the receiving end. So what can we do to improve the situation? Well, instead of cherry-picking a few random cases as the Swedish YouTuber did, we should focus on collecting proper statistics and data from across the world to properly understand the human behavior. At the same time, necessary reforms should be brought into the judicial system so that offenders can be punished and victims do not hesitate to report. Unfortunately, in many countries, there is not enough data available, and in many cases, the local authorities do not have the necessary will. As far as online harassment is concerned, in India there are some laws which can be used. India also has a national cybercrime reporting portal which can also be helpful. There are also laws against online sexual harassment in other jurisdictions across the world. In addition, major social media channels have their own guidelines for reporting and dealing with these types of concerns. Today, during this ongoing lockdown, streets are empty and an increasing number of people are going online. Hence, it is very important for us to come together in order to build a safer online world. Instead of stereotyping or vilifying any group, country or community, let's use the modern tools and technology to gather more objective data from across the world so that we can understand what has caused the psychological damage to human minds. Remember, if you are being harassed, do not hold yourself back. Stand forward and raise your voice. Also, if you like to understand this subject better, please watch these episodes as well. See you again.